Okay, welcome to the BAT meeting for Wednesday, March 4th. We have a couple presentations tonight. What we're going to look at is PPS, and that is People Personnel Services, which covers a very wide area. We have Sean Johnson presenting there. Next, we'll look at something we really haven't looked at in the past, and that's our BOCES budget, and kind of what is BOCES. Now, we talked about it a little bit last year, just in terms of every budget from the for each department, but really we didn't go in depth in showing it all in one fell swoop. So we're gonna, for the first time, get to see BOCES in one fell swoop, and it is not a small amount of money, so it's good for the board to see, because after salaries, it is the largest expenditure for the district.
There's not much we can do about it either, right?
No, I mean, we try and back off as much as we can, and you'll see tonight we did have a definite increase in BOCES. We've looked at where we can actually cut, because sometimes service needs require that we actually increase services. We either do them here or we do them at BOCES. And so we really looked with a deficit, what can we do without, and we'll go through all that. And then we'll start looking at the very beginnings of the budget deficit for this coming year. And I'm going to preface that by saying that was our starting point. That's not where we're at right now. So when you see that, I don't want anyone to pass out or faint or say, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's not as bad as what it looks like when we first began the process. But we need to start at what the beginning was so we know where we're going to be at by the end, okay? So, that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Johnson.
Okay. First, I just want to talk a little bit about PPS, where he said real fast, he said me to let a little back up. PPS, you probably think is special ed, but besides special ed, 504s, it also oversees all the health services.
And what? 504, for those who don't know?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay, a 504 is an accommodation plan for students that have some sort of disability, but they don't need special ed services. So it's an accommodation in the classroom. Like one of the accommodations of 504, if you had a student that was blind, we might have Braille up in the bathrooms. But he doesn't need a special ed support service. He needs those accommodations. A child with diabetes, we use a 504. A lot of kids with ADHD, anxiety, for plans in the classroom that the teachers can do. It's not direct service, but that falls under PPS. Health services, so all the nurses, anything that has to do with health-related issues comes through the PPS office, which is also your sports physicals and that management of it. We also oversee our ESL program, English as a Second Language. We have students that receive those support services in the district. We also, as I've talked to you before, are responsible for McKinney-Vento students. That is our homeless children, and we do have several in the district. So we oversee that too. Trying to think what else.
Free and reduced lunch.
Free and reduced lunch falls under there. Medicaid falls under there. So anything that has to do with students and their needs and anything that can help them, even down to we help families in the district get insurance. We work with Independent Health and Univera to help them get insurance. That falls under the PPS office. So I just want to give you a little heads up of what comes out of there. In there, just to give you a little bit of facts, if you take the 504s and any child that has a disability in this district from 3 to 21, we have approximately right now, as of today, 329 students receiving services in this district. 275 of them are your special ed, and then 54 are the 504 kids. So I thought that would be kind of interesting. Servicing these students in our department is 16 special ed teachers, 2 speech, 1 OT. We contract our PT. We don't have our own PT. 15 aides, and that's throughout the district. And some of the programs that you might want to know about, I don't know if anybody's seen all of our programs, but we have self-contained classrooms, one at the GLP, one at the elementary, that typically have children with autism in them and other different needs. We have another self-contained at the elementary school with children with multiple needs. And self-contained means they're basically in there most of the day. They definitely go to their specials. They are in the lunchroom.
And special as music, art, things like that.
Yep, they do that too. And also up at the high school level. Then throughout all the buildings, there'll be, we call them special classes, maybe for English or math, where the student might be in your typical 4th grade class, but they need a smaller one for English or math. We have resource rooms. We have consultant teachers where my teachers go in and co-teach with the teachers. We have everything on the continuum. And I want to back up because I have just spent 2 grueling days. We are being audited by the state in special ed. We have never been audited in this district. We're the only district in Western New York that has not been audited. And the reason they said is they have not received 1 commissioner's complaint, 1 lawsuit coming out of this district. So that's kudos to the PPS department because the teachers, the staff, the aides, everybody, that's why we don't have these issues, because of them.
And I think a point to make with that, and this is just in general, when you see a lawsuit with special ed is typically far more expensive than a lot of other lawsuits that we see.
Right, thousands and thousands of dollars. So you really have to compliment, and some of my staff are behind me now, because they do that job, the connection they have with the parents, people aren't suing us. So the state gave us a little pat in the back. There's other things we got to fix up paperwork, but otherwise, that's huge, and that's why we haven't had an audit. So we're going through it right now. So I just wanted to fill you in on that. A couple of little things before.
John, can I just jump in? I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned that you have aides, but I know there are other aides in the district. You don't pay for all aides in the district. I just wanted to clarify that.
But, right, the other aides in the district are through the buildings. Lawrence Building has the preschool, and, well, really, there isn't many left, and library aides.
But there are a few.
Yeah, the rest are, and with the aides, and we'll talk about that in a second, they're different roles. Most of the aides are one-to-one. They're assigned to a student with severe behavioral or academic needs or physical needs, and then the other aides are in your self-contained classroom. So when we say down in Katie Musso's class into GLP, it's a 1-8-1. There's 1 teacher, 1 aide, and could be up to 8 students. And speaking of students, I want to jump into there, and I think I've talked to you in the past about this. Because our programs are good, if you want to say that, we have 9 other students coming in from 4 districts paying us tuition to have their students come to our program. That amount of money is $264,000, it's $270, that those districts pay to have their kids come to our programs. So they're paying for their students, so it's not costing us the money. It's not costing us anything, but it could be helping me to keep my staff because of the way, and he's the money man, he'll tell you, I figure it out with him how we do it. But just so you know, with them coming, don't ever think it's costing us money, because it's not. They're paying us. But it might help me keep some of my staff when the budget is tight because of that $264,000. Did you have something to say?
I don't know if I can. You have a question? Go ahead first.
Oh, yeah.
How about you first?
I'm just, the 264, 270, that's total?
I'm going to talk to that in just a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I will go through that and explain that. Yeah.
So there's 264 to 270,000.
It's 264, 200, I can't do math, 264, 270. What is that, $264,270.
But, okay.
Sure.
And I guess in my kind of terms, so if you have a special needs person that chooses to come here and you have to pay a staff person $50,000 for that person, that's where is that money?
Well, what it is I already have.
Salary for
Well,
staff?
I already have the classes going.
Okay.
They're already going for Eden students. So if Orchard Park calls and says, I've got this child with these special needs and we can't find a placement, but I heard you got a class, they're going to pay us. But my class is already going, so it's offsetting that teacher's salary on that part of mine.
So like per student, what is it different depending on the kid's needs?
Yes.
But they could actually be paying as much as $30,000 a year.
Our most expensive student that they're paying is $70,000. Yeah.
And quite honestly, when you look at
Cheaper than
each
BOCES.
student,
I'm shocked.
some students have one-on-one aides, some have classroom aides.
Yeah.
But again, if they're in a classroom setting with some of our students, it does pay for part of our teacher costs, of which we're going to have.
Isn't that creative? That keeps our programs going for our kids.
Do you have any of those students that are one-to-one that are being brought in from other districts?
With the one-to-one aid?
Yeah.
Yes, 3 of
we
them. 3 of them are. Ironic thing, these students have been with us for 3 years so far and have been very successful here. But it's paying for their aid. They pay for the aides.
Yeah, we do.
I have to manage them and hire them.
We
Yeah.
pass it through.
Yeah, but it's keeping my program going. That's a large amount of money. Yes.
Should we market this?
Well,
Well, no,
I
here's
get in
what I would
trouble
say.
for that, okay.
We've got two things we need to take a look at. Number one, there is a state maximum of what we're not supposed to go over for a number of special ed students. That's a first thing. Number two, you got to look at something to say, every time we bring in a student from another district, if we don't have staff to cover it and we increase staff, that becomes part of our spending. Just because another district may decide to not send that kid anymore, we've now hired Joe, staff person, on. So now we've either got to lay Joe, staff person off or spread them up, whoever remains. It becomes a little messy to say, let's bring on as many as possible. So it's not clean.
I want to tell you something. I think it's cool that two districts, my former district I work for, Frontier, and Orchard Park, which are big districts, send their kids here. That's a compliment for a little old Eden that we have that program. But you're right. You get too many. Plus, it's a lot of work. I mean, these are not the kids that could fit into their program. So these kids are a little, more needs. Okay, so that's that part. I just have two other things, and then we'll look at it.
Does that impact their rankings based upon student achievements?
No.
No, it does not. They're not our.
They're actually included in their home district.
So they're included in their home?
Yep.
districts, okay.
Yep. It's like a BOCES place, that type of thing.
Okay.
Does it, do they affect the teachers, APPR, the teachers that have them?
I don't know.
I don't know. That would be a principal.
Kelly, do they?
In order for them to be included in your APPR, you have to have a total of 16 scores or more.
Right.
So.
And Kelly has 5
currently,
kids.
not affect.
But at the high school level,
No, it does not affect at the high
It's a
school.
teacher of record, it's for their teacher of record.
Right, but the high school level,
So it depends, right.
it depends, because there's only 3 in the one class, so one counts.
You have to look into the specific teacher.
I'm pretty, well, thanks.
81.
Yeah, I think yeah, thanks.
Yeah, but you know who affects it more? All the other special ed kids that we have 300 in the district. Okay, those kids.
Oh, I didn't mean just, I get it.
Yeah.
I just, when you mentioned, does it affect our scores? I think it's a bigger question. I think it's more complex answer, which scores it would affect.
Yeah, because it goes on.
Rather than just blanket, it doesn't affect scores.
Back to the home district.
Okay, just 2 more things and I'll talk about this real quick. So you know about our programs, you know about our sensory rooms, I've told you all that stuff before. I wanted to bring up 3 things real quick. Last time we were talking about technology, I just wanted to let you know what we've done in our department. All my teachers from K through 6 and one up at the high school have smart boards because we got a grant a few years ago from Obama that we bought all those, and so we were able to get that. And we are up to 38 iPads for my students because of the autism walk. So because we brought in 25,000 and 18,000 on the autism walk. And speaking of that, we didn't run one, if you noticed this year, due to the 3 of
It
us.
hasn't come up yet. It would be April.
It would be in April. Well, we're not running it because they would have heard it by now because of some things that were going on personally with the people that have done it. So, Mr. Cudahy's back there. The Eden All Sports Boosters, I went and talked to them. This is so cool. I had an idea because my self-contained classes wants to go to Saba. You know what Saba is? So they want to go to that, and to send them, it's about $3,000 in transportation. It's free, but that's a lot of money. We don't have that. We can't pay for it. So I thought, that's a sport. I'll go talk to Mr. Cudahy and the Sports Boosters and see if we could do something together. So they have agreed, and we're going to be doing with them, they have their 5K run, which is changing now to June 13th this year, and it's going to be a 5K run autism walk to help raise money because it's for our students. A lot of our students might not be on your varsity teams, your JV teams, but they can be in sports. So I just want you to we try to find money any way we can. So, okay.
And good, since we are a budget advisory team, bring it back to the budget in your budget presentation
Well,
here.
you told me to go through all this stuff and let them know.
Absolutely.
God. I just told you. Okay, so look at my budget, and you were asking Jenny some questions. The cost for the special ed part on the top, for the 15-16 school year, there's really, if you look, there is hardly any change. And the one area of change was the 471 code. You see that over there, 2250471. It says tuition, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong one. I'm sorry, 472. Tuition to all other. What that is our kids that would be in private placements like Falk, Gateway, Summit, Randolph Academy, that we've put, CSE has put into those placements. That, you'll see, has gone down from 227,000 to 139. So that's significant. The reason is, it's about $88,000 it's gone down. It's gone down because I kind of put it in the BOCES, and you'll see the difference of the change in the BOCES, because you're going to notice my BOCES when time goes through it. So that's decreasing the amount of students. I have one out there right now.
Now, why would you move a student from there over to BOCES?
Over to BOCES, a couple reasons why. First of all, it's very tricky to get some of these students into a Gateway or a Falk because of location. Williamsville, Cheektowaga, Buffalo, it's very hard, sometimes families. I utilize the less restrictive setting, which is a BOCES, and we use North Collins. So that's what, 5 minutes, 7 minutes down the road. So I rather utilize that because they're still in a typical school setting, but in the smaller classes. The students that go to your Falk are your most severe. We've been able to manage those kids in district and at BOCES. So that's why we're doing it. And plus, there's some changes in regulations of what's allowed in those privates, like no aides anymore, which was a big issue that we had last year that upped my BOCES budget, and you'll talk about that later, right?
No, I'll let you talk about your BOCES.
You want now or later? Okay.
Later's fine.
What happened to us, just to give you a real, because this is going to, we make our budget now, okay? You approve it. I don't know what's going to walk in or happen over the summer. Well, what happened is I had 2 students out in Aspire, and due to the new regulations that changed, they were not allowed to have one-to-one aides. So the parents, we had to find a placement. So I went from a $35,000 tuition. BOCES accepted them, and the tuition was about $100,000 to $120,000. So that is why my BOCES budget
child.
per child. Per child.
So you will see, and this is
An
a good point to
increase.
bring up. This is a decrease in this line here. You're going to see a definite increase in the BOCES line just because of the services actually which
That
they'll be
the children
receiving.
need.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that they couldn't do.
Just, what was the change in the reg?
That in the private settings, no more personal aides.
Because,
You know what I'm talking about, Cataletian, Heritage, Spock, no more
is there any
personal.
rationale, or just,
Well, the rationale, of course, is
Cost.
money when it comes to the state. They don't want to spend it, so they increase the classroom aides. I even worked with state ed to try to go against it. They increase the classroom aides and say, well, we have more adults in there, but it's not giving, and these kids have severe medical issues, and you know, get choking, but yeah. So that's the new regulations from our state ed. So that's why my BOCES is budgeted up when you see it. Okay, so there's my lines, and that's why we decreased it, but otherwise, nothing else has changed. Really, I've gone down from 299 to 210, and that's at 88,000. The bottom portion, your 2815, is your health services, the nurses, the physicals. And if you look at that student examination, because I'm like, what is that? $51,000. We have to pay for portions of the nurses' salaries at St. Peter and Paul. Wherever we have kids in those non-pubs, we have to pay part of that. We have no control over that, so we have to pay that. But otherwise, from the 14-15 to the 15-16, we went from $359,000 down to $271,000, and our number of students are increasing. I think that's physical. That's a good, I mean, you know.
Back to the nurses, does
Yes.
that include like Nichols and those schools?
That includes any privates that we get a bill from. So we'll get a bill from their home district. So Orchard Park will send us a bill saying for health and welfare services for private schools in our district. Here you go. So we get them from Orchard Park. I think we get Hamburg. We get about 5 districts we get bills from that say we have students who are in private schools that in our area that reside in Eden, and here's the healthcare costs. So it could be any. So if it's a Nichols, we'd get some.
Orchard Park picks up the...
It goes through Orchard Park and then they bill us.
Wow, and I didn't even know that until I saw that in there. Just
So it
like,
doesn't include the city schools.
You know, I honestly, I do not recall seeing one Buffalo bill
Buffalo,
for health and
yeah.
welfare. Not one. Maybe that's because they're so far behind. I don't know, but I haven't seen one for Buffalo yet.
and if you have a special ed student that happens to, that's ours, that happens to decide to go to, let's say, St. Peter or Paul in Hamburg, I have no control over that. I have no control over what services they get, what program they get. I have no control, yet we have to pay the bill, and Tom and I don't even know the kids are there.
Right.
And then we get a bill for $30,000 out of nowhere that we don't even know. That's another state ed regulation.
We received a bill just for a portion of last year from Orchard Park for $5,000.
Right.
That was only for a portion. We don't get notice when they go there. We don't know anything until we get the bill the first time, because there's no requirement for the home district or the district that the child is going to school in to actually tell you. So you know when you get the bill, and once you get a bill the first time, you know they're pretty much going to be in for the duration of private school. But, so yeah, so that's fine.
Just to clarify that, because it just happened recently at another school, once we get a bill with a student's name on it, before we pay it, I do make them submit the enrollment and residency form so that we know that they really do live in the
We do
district.
verify there
So I
are
do
kids.
verify it.
Mhm. Good point.
That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
And I know a couple people walked in late. Does everyone have a copy of your presentation? Barb,
No,
did you have a
Barbie,
copy?
need one? You took them from me.
You know what? I do have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
Talk about, because I've always been curious about this state max. We're not supposed to go over X number of special ed students. What exactly? I've never really understood what that.
Percentage. Go ahead.
Well, it's, we don't go to jail if we do it, and they really, I remember when I first started in this, so many years ago, it was like, don't go in the double digits, okay? So don't go over 10%, don't. But our demographics, which you heard in the budget presentation, as well as every other district, mostly in New York, our demographics are changing. So the state doesn't put clamps on you that we're probably up to 12, 13% special ed kids in this district. What they do put a clamp on you is, out of those kids, how many are, they look at ethnicity, suspensions, not getting the right services. So you can have them, you better do the right thing, but if you don't, then you'll get dinged.
Okay.
So, they haven't come in. I'm sitting with the state now. She sees her number of kids. I said, is it out of control? She goes, yeah, everywhere. Everywhere. Everywhere, everybody is up there. And the needs are changed, the demographic has changed with the mental health issues, the behavioral issues, the preschoolers. We were there with one of the preschool people. We have 3- and 4-year-olds that are in desperate needs of placements, and we don't have them. So, yep. Okay. But we don't get in trouble yet for that. Yet.
Yeah. So one of the things I actually want to point out, as we look at the budget, and I've mentioned this to the board before, with our changing demographics, we are going to see more and more pressure put on the budget because students with special needs, it just costs more to educate students with special needs. We know this. So when you look at statewide averages for a general education student versus a student with special needs, it could be 2 to 3 times as much for a student with special needs. So when you look at that, and as we are getting more students with special needs, and it's more per student, and the pressures keep mounting, eventually we as a district are going to need to make some tough choices to say our pie, which right now is $26 million, can only be a $26 million pie. We can't change the pie. The pie is a pie, as I've said a million times. So if we have to slice it differently, what do we need to do differently? And eventually what this will keep doing every single year is putting pressure as we increase services for students with special needs, then we're going to have to cut elsewhere. And you'll see as part of our deficit this year, there is a pressure there. It's not a large pressure, but it'll grow each year. And unfortunately, that is a fact that districts across Western New York and across the state are actually seeing. So you will notice in the BOCES line that has gone up significantly in PPS. And that is part of the reason why. So you'll see that as we're going along. So next, what I actually want to do is, I remember last year what we did with BOCES. Thank you, Sean. What we did with BOCES is we took a look at BOCES within each department line. And really, that's the first time we actually looked at what BOCES was. BOCES just became part of the overall budget. We never, from what I've heard, we've never really took a look at the BOCES budget as a whole to see what we, the district, spend. As I said, you guys, outside of salaries, it is the next largest cost we have as a district, so you should be seeing what we spend on that. So I recall last year when we started talking about BOCES, there was a lot of concern, question. What is BOCES? Why do we have services through there? Tell us a little bit more about BOCES. So at least what we did is just a very brief, just some background. Paul, you probably don't even need this, but I will pass it on. And,
Yeah, I think we can.
so, so one of the things actually want to point out, as we look at the budget, and I mentioned this to the board before, with our changing demographics, we are going to see more and more pressure put on the budget because students with special needs, it just costs more to educate students with special needs. And eventually, what we did is just a very brief, just some background. Paul, you probably don't even need this, but I will pass it on.
You're the face.
No, this we did not get a chance to.
You got what name tags of BOCES. Here's all of it.
Okay, just a couple real quick slides, nothing major here, but just again, a little background. Because I believe one of the comments we heard, and anyone feel free to correct me from what you heard last year, but two comments I recall hearing last year is, oh, it's for those kids. Well, it's not just for those kids. Trust me, BOCES is used, can be used almost for all of our students. It is not only used for our students, it is used for our staff, it's used for administrators, it's used for training, it's used for our support functions, it's used for computer functions. There is a very wide range of services BOCES provides. So when you take a look at it, what is BOCES? It's the Board of Cooperative Educational Services. Formed in 1948, school districts realized that they cannot afford to do everything they wanted to do. I wasn't around in the mid-40s, but from what I understand, around the war years and rations started, life was not as plentiful as they used to know in years past, and as everyone's budgets got tighter back then, and if they thought it was tight then, they should see us now, but they realized they couldn't afford everything they wanted to in life, and school districts couldn't afford everything they wanted to in life. So they couldn't hire as much staff as they wanted to. So what they found is, well, it costs us more to offer our service ourselves. What happens if 2 or more districts go in together on a service? It could be any service. It could be English as a second language. It could be foreign language. It could be computer needs. It could be anything that 2 or more districts go in and say, we have a common need for, can we jointly do this? So looking at this, it's a shared program or service. So from that, we pool our resources and we pool our costs. So looking at probably what it started in 1948 to what it has become now, it has changed over the years. I think what BOCES looked like in the 1970s and 1980s is significantly different than what it looks like right now. And I think a lot of the misconceptions as to what BOCES is may date back decades. But it is a very wide organization. If you look on the next page, one of the things you see is it is an extremely large budget. It's almost $3 million for us, and you'll see that. But the costs are lower than if we just offered all those services on our own, or we just wouldn't be able to offer the services, one of the two. So our budget goes up significantly higher, or our kids aren't getting some of the programs they need, or we're not able to get some of the services. So the way that it actually works is a district selects services for that year, and the following year, we get a portion of the aid back. It's called BOCES aid. Our aid ratio, the amount that we get back, changes a little bit every year. The aid ratio is based on the total amount of BOCES services that BOCES has for all of the component districts. And from there, we see money back the following year. So when you look at a program that might cost $100,000, if our aid is 70%, the following year we'll get $70,000 back. Not all services are aidable. They let us know which ones are, which ones are not. There is an administrative fee that we pay as well, which you'll see in the budget, and that just comes part and parcel with belonging to BOCES. So looking at that, I think just on the last slide, I just wanted to at least give a sense, because people keep saying, what's part of BOCES? What are some things included? Career and technical education, special education services, which we'll talk about, technology services and integration of the technology. And again, I think it's important to say for both students and staff. And what you're going to see, 2 of our largest lines are in special ed and computer-related items. And that includes not only for students, but for all of our systems that we actually use. My financial system, I'm finance manager, is part of what goes through BOCES. Technical assistance, delivering mainframe, micro, and mini-based computer services. Board policy services. So everything you as a board, with all the board adoption of new policies, we get updates regularly from BOCES that say, here's what you need to know. Here are regulations that are changing, be aware of, so we don't find ourselves not following, state and federal mandates. Labor relations. We've made a concerted effort this year. We have been negotiating contracts since the first day Sandy walked in. CSEA, supervisors, treasurer, confidentials, ETA right now, we've just gone from one to another. Now your choices are, you can go through an external law firm, or you can actually go through BOCES Labor Relations. Now we had started with Labor Relations, just their general service if you have questions, and then Sandy had come to the board and said, look, as we're moving through this, we want to actually bring some of those labor costs down, or the attorney costs down, by going to the BOCES Labor Relations. And so you'll see there is a slight increase because of that as well. Literacy programs and student workforce training, and professional development for staff. And I think one of the things that Kelly Morgan Lambrosa, our director for curriculum instruction, will tell you is she's really trying to hone all of the professional development opportunities through BOCES. Okay, so that's just a little bit there. Let me pass out the BOCES budget. There you go. Okay, I'll wait for everyone to get it. Okay, and first, one of the reasons I know for a fact you have never really seen it in this format before is because when I ran this report, everything where it says BOCES purchasing, BOCES personnel, et cetera, all said BOCES. So I knew right then and there that wasn't very descriptive for anyone, so that was a good clue that you guys had never really seen it as such. So it's really broken down, so you'll see there are services for purchasing. BOCES puts out to bid a lot of different types of services, whether it be custodial, whether it be any number of services to find the lowest possible cost. We belong to that, so we are getting the best pricing, and BOCES actually puts out bids on behalf of all districts to try and coordinate the best pricing. Personnel, that is the labor relations that I was telling you about. You see that it's been pretty consistent for the past couple of years at about 15,000. It's grown to 35. The reason for that, again, is we are bringing contract negotiations to BOCES. So that 20,000 increase is less than what we would be paying an outside legal firm. Operation of plant, that has remained virtually unchanged, buildings and grounds. Central data processing, I'm going to hold on this one for a second. We'll come back to that in a minute. There is a slight increase in that line. Administrative costs, as I mentioned before, this is the fee that BOCES charges us just for being part of BOCES, and I believe it's something like, and Paul, you may know this, only 4 school districts don't belong to a BOCES, or 5? 5. It's the big 5 schools. Right. Every other district belongs to a BOCES. It's only the 5. Okay? And that is our shared cost for BOCES to operate. Special costs, $93,000. You guys will probably recall from last year where I mentioned that BOCES had a small capital project going on. This is our portion. They said they had increased it for last year and this year. They are looking at a potential large capital project in the coming future. We're talking somewhere in the range of maybe $25–30 million. Paul, am I right about that figure?
Different figures have been going around, but I guess.
Is it for one location?
No, it is for all the BOCES 2 locations that we all take part in. Because since we all districts in BOCES 2 send our kids there, we're all responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of their buildings, just like we're responsible for our own individual district maintenance and upkeep. And they'll come out, and they've said they will give us a presentation on what they're looking at for their capital project too, and talk about how it has been years since they've improved their infrastructure and how they no longer can actually put off their infrastructure costs. What you're seeing here are just minor fixes to hold them through before they get to that major capital project cost. So that's the special cost. Curriculum and instruction, you see that cost in one line has gone down a little bit. We've got some workshops for trainings, regular school, again, for curriculum, research, planning, and evaluation. We have things like GASB 45, which is real exciting, but it's accounting standards. Any new changes come up, they watch for us on that. Finance and legislation, what's going on through the state. They advise districts across the state, the various BOCES, and what's going on there as well. In-service training for instruction is pretty much the same. Teaching, regular school, so for our students going out to BOCES classes. Program, students with disability, PPS, special education. We're going to talk about that one separately too.
I got a question.
Yes.
You know, that we're now having to send some of the kids, as she mentioned, to BOCES. Can we send them to other schools, like other districts send them to other schools? Price?
Well, actually, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to table that for just a minute.
Okay.
Because what we've done is we've sent them out to other facilities like a Summit or wherever. And traditionally, we're sending them to other facilities because we as a school district are not able to handle their extreme needs. So if we as a school district are not able to handle their extreme needs, and Hamburg wouldn't be able to, and Amherst wouldn't be able to, we offer pretty good special ed services, and we have kids here even with autism, which is generally more profoundly impacted. So we offer a really good range of services for kids with special needs. After that, you're going beyond what most school districts are able to provide, and then you need to go to a special setting like a Summit or BOCES. So most other school districts wouldn't be able to. I think that answers the question. I'll have Sean talk on that maybe a little bit more as well, but I think that's going to be the same answer. His question was for our students who have more profound needs. Rather than send them to a BOCES, could we send them to another school district like an Orchard Park or Hamburg? My answer was, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, is if we are not able to service them in our district and we have a pretty good special ed program and they have more profound needs, they're going to go to another agency like a Summit or someone who handles those special needs or a BOCES.
Right, right. And I'm telling you though, I'm hoping, we were just talking to state ed, that those profound needs, I would love to have my own program in 2 years, which I would be able to do with my staff because the kids execute and but if they're really, they would go to a Summit with cannulation, you know, because then it's a great transition for some of these students to go into the work, you know, supervised work program.
Or a group home or wherever the case may be.
Is that state aidable?
Which, the BOCES?
Well, the BOCES.
Well, we don't get the BOCES aid back on the special ed students. We get aid, we do get aid on those students through other lines, not through BOCES. You can't double dip on aid, on any aid. So if we get a grant for a staff person, we can't get any other type of aid.
No, but if they're being sent to BOCES, the more profound ones.
We get other aid through Medicaid and STAC. So since we're getting Medicaid and STAC aid, we cannot get BOCES aid on them because that would be double dipping. So we do get aid back on those students, absolutely. It's just from a different line. And you'll see that line, there is a definite increase. Occupational education, school, library, and AV, and computer-assisted instruction, there is a big increase in that line as well. So really those two lines we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and inter-school athletics being part of Section 6, that actually goes through BOCES as well. So
Can we ask questions yet, or?
you can ask whatever you want.
Back to the occupational education. Is that where they go over to take air conditioning, heating, cooling?
Career and tech ed?
Career
Yeah.
and tech,
that would be part of it.
line? Okay.
So that's part of it?
Let me look at my notes here, but yeah, that should be in that specific line. But let me just double check that code. 2280. Yep, that would be part of that line.
Okay, and like cosmetology,
All of this.
small animal?
Other questions?
The interscholastic athletics, you said it, I just don't understand what you meant by Section 6 and...
ECIC and the dues that we have to pay there, and there's also a shared coordinator that runs through BOCES that coordinates all of the athletics programs. So we pay ECIC dues out of there, and we pay for that coordinator as well.
Coordinator.
And just going back to the OCAD just for a minute, just to let you know some of the things that go in there. So the career and tech ed, all career and tech ed. We have a one-on-one teacher aide within that. We have CTE, exploration. There's a new program with P-TECH, and I probably am not the best person to talk about P-TECH, but it's a brand new program of a student starting through, is it all secondary and going all through preparing them for college?
Yeah, it starts,
7th grade.
Joe, 7th or 8th grade?
It's 8th graders moving into 9th grade.
Okay.
It's a 6-year program. So the students will start high school in 9th grade. And then when they finish their 12th grade year, there's 2 more years of it's basically career tech and college mixed together. So they'll leave with an associate's degree in the career field that they experience in the particular P-Tech program. The P-Tech program in our Erie 2 is a manufacturing program. There's other ones that are medical and nursing. There's various, it depends on what the individual organization writes their grant for. So it's truly a 6-year program, but they'll leave with an associate's degree in the career field that they're involved in.
And this is brand new for us this year. We are sending 2 students next year.
Do we have to pay the 2 additional years?
We would pay that price every year. We would pay it, yes, so it's $19,000 per student. So yes. And any other questions on that line before we get to either the computer line or the special ed line? And we've got about 14 minutes left before the board, before we need to start breaking up. So I just want to make sure we get to everything. Any other questions before we get to the special ed? Yes, Barb.
I'd like to know about the programs, a student with disabilities. It was,
Yep.
It started out in 2012-13 at $814,000, and we spent $677,000. Then 13-14, the budget was $643, and we spent less, $570,000. And again, in 14-15, we budgeted for less, $605,000, and we spent again less.
Well, we didn't spend less in 14-15. That's only so far this year. We're going to spend about $700,000 in 14-15. This is only a partial year showing for 14-15 expenses.
Why is it going up so?
Because
Going up to 900.
it is. It is. When Sean made her presentation, she had said, we are actually, some of our students are moving from other areas like Aspire and different facilities and going over to BOCES, and a changing demographic population. So what you will see in that students with special needs is that line swings a lot, because you don't know necessarily what you're going to have from year to year. We try to build in a little bit of a buffer. One student couldn't cost you over $100,000. One student. And if a student moves into our district that we don't know about, that could be that charge. So whereas you saw in 13-14, and really, Sean, I probably should be letting you present this, but if you need me to, let you have.
I will, because I had explained it before, and that's why we took out the $88,000 in that private tuition and put it there.
In her budget.
What happens, Barb, is you're planning a budget right now, and you're approving it in May, and what happened last year is 2 students came in July. That budget was already set. They cost $100,000. And to let you know, all budgets, BOCES prices in special ed went up this year, again. You know, so that's what happens. They come in, it's already budgeted. You don't have to know. That was $200,000 that was added in July.
If it was added in July, but the budget for, we're not done yet.
Correct. So when I said the budget was 605, we'll be in the upper 700s by the time we're said and done with this year. So.
And the other question I had was, prior to this, we were trying to keep kids, now, this isn't just about disabilities, but we were trying to keep kids back at home and some of the courses here instead of sending them out.
And we have.
Have we done that?
We have brought a lot of the kids back here, absolutely. And Sean?
Well, our number in BOCES is very low. And the thing is, we bring them back. Now, what was interesting is the last 2 months, 3 students went out from this building because there are needs that don't manage in this building.
So again, in the last 2 months, 3 students.
January, that wasn't budgeted for, you know. But I tried to bring our students, and we only have 11 out right now.
Well, I'm really focusing on the tech classes, some of the tech classes, and not the special needs kids so much as our regular kids. We were trying to pull them back in and have classes here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Barb, and back when we did this a couple years ago, this was our initiative, and There's costs associated to it. I'm going to tell you, we now bring almost all the kids that want to do CAD come here, but I had to beef up the CAD lab. So we had to outlay some money, and I actually have to spend about another $10,000 to keep it up to pace for next year, because we are keeping all the kids here. So yes, we are trying to do it, but there's a cost associated with that too. So,
Was it in the lesser, like we were planning on it? Or did it?
We'd have to look it up.
Was it a
I don't know if we've actually.
I can't, I don't have the history for that. I can't answer that question.
And
No, that's correct.
if I may,
That is correct.
sometimes the difference is what sort of certification they'll get from here compared to what they'll get at vocational. So there's tests, there's affiliations, and there's certs that,
And you don't get the BOCES reimbursement the following year.
It's state aided.
It's state aidable when they go to BOCES for career
And is
tech.
it 100%?
No,
No,
it's like 70.
we're right around 70% right now. It varies
70%.
every year.
So it costs like 30% to send a student.
The other line that I want to touch on, and Barb, thanks for bringing up the students with disabilities line. And listen, just if you can touch on, because I want to let people know what the deficit's going to be for the coming year, some of the things that actually are in the computer assisted instruction, which is the second line from the bottom, which is moving from 165 to 333. Those were the two big jumps that you actually saw in BOCES for this coming year.
Yeah. Okay, so, you know, I was actually first out of the gun presenting to the BAT team this year, and one of the things that Tom and I discussed after was that my hardware line, which is about $200,000, that I'm hoping for next year that we need to just replace existing equipment, we decided I mostly spend that with BOCES, so that's pretty much the majority of what you just saw here. Is
I'm
I
moving the
moved it
hardware.
from our current planned budget from an in-district line to this BOCES line, because we will get the aid back on it.
Not only that, the other thing is, since we spent it with BOCES to begin with, if we do go to a contingent budget, we hope we never will go to a contingent budget, but if we do, our BOCES lines are left intact. So for us, when it comes to the computer lines, our equipment lines would be frozen. I'd rather have it in the BOCES budget where we're still able to spend it. Otherwise, all computer purchases would just be gone.
So
That
this is
200,000.
actually purchasing through BOCES. It's
Yes.
not actually utilizing BOCES
Yes.
for
And
the
Yeah.
normally
class.
I do that, but I start in the budget process in basically an in-district line, like I showed you last month. And then when we make the purchase, because we never pre-load it, we always wait until we get the actual bill, we move it over to this line and do that. So Tom and I were just talking, so
Yep.
why don't we just start with it there, so everybody sees where it really is reflected.
So prior, we weren't getting aid on it, and now we're...
No. In the budget process, it just started in the
different
district
spot.
line, and then it got moved during the year over to BOCES. But I'd rather start it, if there's any possibility of contingent budget or any contention, I'd rather start in the BOCES line, so if we do go contingent, we don't have to worry about that.
Which is, as I mentioned, I'm not talking about new stuff here, I'm talking about just replacing things that have aged out. And
So
that's-
her other lines, which she presented on, went down 200,000.
Right.
So it just was mere transference.
Other items in that line, besides the hardware, are some of the things that Mike mentioned before, that there's just basic fees because we rent the BOCES broadband services. Just to belong to their network in general, we're charged fees, and that's like $2,600 that there's nothing we can do about it. We belong to their network, their infrastructure, and there's some basic fees. And I have my cost analysis. They didn't go up that much. And as a matter of fact, that basic fee, because our student population is going down, and it's based on our WADA, which you speak better than I do, it's based on our population.
Residential weighted average daily
Right.
attendance.
That actually went from 2686 down to 2639 because our enrollment is going down. So some of the lines actually go down because it's based on our population.
All of our computer programs that we actually use, so our Power School, which is our student database, Finance Manager, our financial database, what are some of the other ones that go through that?
And that's in actually that other line where you see central data processing. I can just go down the list. IP Direct, which is our special ed, RTIM Direct, which is our 504, Power Schools, test scoring. We have to pay for all that 3 through 8 testing to be scored and uploaded to the state through BOCES. Data warehouse, how we review all that data. School Messenger is our change, and I spoke to Mike about that. Global Connect, which is that calling system that you all get those calls, it's going away, and that is a line that's going to go up a little bit. That cost us this year about $2,500. switch to School Messenger, the new service is going to double that almost about to 5,800, but we're going to have so many more additional features. I hopefully will see the benefit of that, being able to text parents, being able to send email blasts, to be able to have it automatically post to our website. So there's some additional things to be able to take it to a granular level. Right now, the principals send out those global connects, or Sandy, Tom, or I do at the district level. With School Messenger, a classroom teacher might be able to send one just to her class. A coach might be able to send it just to their coach, the football team, and say, oh, no, the bus is changing or whatever. So it's going to be able to offer us a lot more services for that additional money. But Lotus Notes, School Wires, which is our
Lotus
website.
Notes is email.
Our VoIP, which I do want to point out, we are, our telephone service is all through BOCES, through our data network. I'm going to talk about that, which for everything, the service, all of that, our long distance calls or whatever, that's about 29,000, but that's everything. They take care of all of that infrastructure plus all the calls. So those are the types of things in there. Did that answer most of your questions?
Other BOCES questions? Okay. Well, as I said, I felt it was important that all of you really did get to see in one fell swoop what it looked like. We haven't done that in the past, so you should be seeing that. So looking at that, that concludes now all the departmental budgets. So now looking at that, we said we would start taking a look and say, the budget process as a whole, what does this mean now that we've looked at all the individual parts and bringing it all together? Just like last year, we know our revenues will not be as high as what our expenses are going to be. So when we begin the process, we start the process by saying, what are the needs? And if you recall from last year, and I see some people are reading ahead, but as we, last year, well, we did. Sorry, Board President. We began really with looking at what the district needs to do to move forward. So regardless of any hurdles that we have to overcome with state aid, any other deficits that we may incur, and any of the hard work that we're going to have to do throughout the year, we know moving forward that there are still certain things that we as a district want to do to improve instruction for students. So we take a look and say, what are those things that we actually need to do? So in last year, how we did it is we began the process by saying, what are the budget neutral things that we're actually looking at? And the budget neutral weren't because of our deficit, but really looking at what is it that we want to do to move forward, and what do we need to do to give up to get what we need to do to move forward. So looking at that on the first page, what you're actually seeing, some of the things, major changes from the 2013-14 budget. First of all, we've had 2 retirements for the coming year, 4th grade and 6th grade. That's going to help a little bit in terms of assisting in terms of cost savings. That part's great. They've given many years of service. They have been wonderful. Sheila Harris and Janice O'Brien, so that is really also going to help in the budget process as well. One of the things that we looked at is it's called a $100,000 capital outlay project. What the state does and has actually put in for years is if you are trying to do certain projects for $100,000 or less, we're not going to make you jump through all the hurdles of going through a full capital project with the state. A full capital project with the state takes years to get through. So they realize there's infrastructure improvements that need to actually happen, and Dave Martin already presented in his budget what he was actually looking at, and looking at small fixer-up projects. Now, we might not think they're small at $100K, but for a school district with a $26 million budget, that is a small project. So looking at that, to do that, you get that money back the following year up to your aid level, and our aid level is about 74%. So if you spend $100,000 in year 1, the following year, you'll get back about $74,000. Our aid ratio changes a little bit each year, but our building aid ratio now is 74%. So if you spend 100 this year, 74 back next year. But you have to spend it the first year to get into that funding stream. And once you do, then you're a consistent funding stream. Dave presented that last year. Sandy has talked about that. Dave has put it back in the budget again this year, as we talked about as well. That's one of the things to move forward so we can start, we know, with the upcoming capital project that we're not going to be able to get everything done we want to. There's still other things that need to get done. As Lucinda said, our VoIP system is probably not going to last until we get to a capital project. So we have things that are pressing need that we can't necessarily afford on our own without getting into these capital outlay projects. Additional aides required at GLP Elementary, an additional 0.5 teacher. As I mentioned, our pie is shifting. We have more students with special needs now. And because of that, yes, ma'am.
What dictates what percentage that we get back? What dictates or regulates how much we get back in aid? Like we get 70s?
Well, there are different aid lines. So which aid are you talking about specifically? BOCES aid, building aid?
The building aid.
The building aid?
Like you said, if we spend 100,000, we should get 71% or 74% back. What dictates that number?
Actually, state ed has a formula they come up with to say based on what you have spent over the years, here is your base aid ratio. In a nutshell for building aid. I mean, in a real short, I can show you the formula.
Where I'm going is if we spend more, do we get more back? That's where I'm...
No, your aid ratio is still the same. So our 74 is going to stay 74. Basically, they have a very complex formula to say how much building have you done over the past 15 or 20 years, depending on the type of project you had. We assume you're going to spend this much in debt service, and so therefore we're going to give you this much aid based on what you actually have done over the past 15 to 20 years. So the $100,000 really is not going to impact our building aid ratio much.
So if you do more building, does your aid go up? That's what
Yes, but how often are you going to pass $5, $10, $20 million projects? Not that often. We're talking major projects. So if you've done no projects within the past 20 years, you're not going to have any building aid because there's nothing for them to reimburse you on because you've done nothing. So they take a look at what you've done over the past 15 to 20 years. Okay. So again, as I mentioned with special education, we know there are more needs that we have for the coming year. So again, looking at our needs in the future, additional aides and 0.5 teacher. And then of course, as we talked about at the community forum, these state aid and GEA restoration, the foundation aid and GEA restoration are frozen. So that's just the beginning portion of it. Go to the next page. If you take a look at the appropriations, our spending, not our revenues, just our spending. Our spending for this year was $26.3 million. Next year with this proposal, before we do any adjustments, is $28 million. And I've broken out into the different categories. Salaries, equipment, BOCES, material supplies, benefits, and debt service. And the reason it's broken out is because you as a BET and as a board really should know where the spending is going up and what the categories are. So if you take a look, for instance, in salaries, they're going up $554,000 out of what was a $13 million budget. It's about a 4% increase. That's actually not unreasonable when you look at the contractual increases. So when you start taking a look at where our big increases are coming from in our spending, so you've got about $550 in salaries. Equipment, $118,000. 100 of that is the capital outlay project as we talked about. BOCES, this is our largest increase, which is one of the reasons why the BOCES presentation was right before this. $980,000 increase. Again, 200 of that was a mere transference from our lines right over to BOCES. I'll tell you that right now. Materials and supplies going up about $180,000. Benefits at about $161,000. Debt service remaining flat. So when you take a look, those are the major categories of what are going up. This is the starting point, certainly not the end point. When you take a look at that.
Wouldn't our debt services go up if we have to spend $100,000?
No, actually our debt service out there is going to, the capital outlay project is included in the general fund, which is our $26 million project. When we do those big capital projects, and what we're actually going to be talking about later tonight, it's a separate fund altogether. It's called the capital fund, which has a whole debt service schedule. Capital outlay doesn't have a debt service schedule because it's just part of your general fund, that $26 million. There's no debt service associated with that. Okay? So if you take a look at the next page, so again, that spending, if you look at all of that, is almost $28.4 million. our revenues for the coming year are relatively flat. We went through some of the revenues at the community forum. We have a slight increase with the tax cap increase with the tax levy, and we kept our state aid lines flat. Actually, our state aid line right now is projected, if nothing else changes, to go down 51,000, but we left it flat. And when you look at those two, our initial deficit that we started with, now this was as of February 22nd, and we'll see, the budget is a process, and we're not there anymore, but our initial deficit was $2.7 million. This is before we look at fund balance, reserves, any changes to any of our spending plans, any changes to our revenue plan if we get additional monies from the governor. So, and just real briefly, what has been looked at and what can we look at to close the gap? Minimize our BOCES proposed expenditures. What you saw, when you saw the BOCES expenditures going from $2.2 million to $3.2 million, when you took a look at that BOCES presentation tonight, it was no longer $3.2 million. We've already reduced money from that BOCES line. The BOCES line now is about 2.9, so we took out $300,000 of proposed BOCES spending from last year, saying there are things that we'll do without. So we've already looked at the BOCES line. So BOCES is one area to look at. Another, as I said, the first grade teacher at GLP and at elementary, that is going to also help. With a reduction in classes at any level, you're going to have a reduction in specials. We touched on specials earlier tonight, but just to remind everyone what a special is, those associated programs associated with a class. So music, art, PE. So a second grade class, computers. So a second grade class will go to art, music, PE. If you don't have one class, you're not going to have those associated music, art, PE, and computers to go along with that. We'll look at sports programs again this year. And as I said, our controlled use of our fund balance and reserves. And when I say controlled use, again, we don't want to spend everything all in one year, because if you spend all your savings in one year, the next year you will be in a very dire situation. So I want to recommend that. Yes, Barb.
In the past, what did the board used to do? Did we used to put a certain amount of money into the savings and in the past, what did the board used to do? How much did we used to put money in there every year?
Absolutely, and we still put money in there every year. And Mr. Loretto, who is actually with us tonight, pointed out we were at the last community forum. I said it is on our website, which it was, but it's a dated one, so we're going to put an updated one on there for everyone as well to show the fund balance and reserves over the past couple of years. What happens is you anticipate how much you are going to use from your reserves every year. And at the end of the year, if you've done everything right and you haven't spent every single dime that you've budgeted for and you have anything left over, you'll say, okay, can we put something back into our savings? And every year, you as a board have taken a look at that and have approved putting some monies back into some of the reserves to rebuild up some of your savings. I will tell you, it had for years, was on the upswing. Now it's actually on a slow, steady decline, but a thoughtful decline, so it's not going very quickly. You guys about 2 years ago, I believe it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, had a plan where you were going to use your reserves all in 5 years. And you had decided as a board, and I think rightfully and smartly so to say, a 5-year plan to use all our reserves was not a wise move for the district. Once you saw that what the governor was doing was not a short-term plan, but a long-term plan to use everything up in 5 years would have put the district in a precarious spot. So you said, let's change that. Let's use our reserves at a slower pace, which we're actually doing right now. Now, we had that presentation in August. We will again this coming summer, as we do every year, our reserve presentation, and we will update our website on that as well.
Tom,
now,
what's changed since the community forum to today that makes our shortfall 400,000 more?
Well, that was everything, including the kitchen sink. Our community forum was actually after this initial figure. So we've already started tightening our belt. So this was our first blush. What were we initially looking at? We are not there right now. And what we will see on the back slide at the next community forum, which is next Saturday, we're going to take a look and see where are we right now and where do we still have to go. So before we get there, what I needed to show the board, and we said we would start this process tonight, is to say, where do we start at? And we're actually ahead of the game as to where we were last year. We weren't even at this point last year. So looking at this, we are starting at 2.7. We're not at 2.7 now. So next Saturday, the administrators are working together as a team to say, what is it we can do as a group to lower that deficit? So we won't be even close to this. And I think by the 14th, you'll see they work very hard to shore up that deficit. So, okay.
As far as the one BOCES line for the occupational, are there restrictions on if you buy the BOCES program? Are you allowed to cherry pick what you will or won't send your students over for?
Well, we pick our BOCES services every year. So we can say we're going to pick service A, B, C, E one year and A, B, C, F, G the following year. So we pick every year what we want to send our students to. So yes, it is our choice of actually what we want to send students to. Some of the things like the administrative fee, we don't have a choice in. But yes, we do take a look. Like the P-TECH program, which is new for the coming year, that is something that we actually are actively looking at.
Tom, I think she was asking specifically for VOTEC and occupational tech.
For OCAD?
Yeah, and I think
P-TECH goes in there.
We choose sometimes, like let's for say that there might be a program that's only offered way out at Laguitas. We might not offer that to our students. And sometimes we just say that's just not cost effective for us to do all that transporting right roads and ice. So yes, we do choose. And we don't have to buy the whole thing.
And are there similar, you know, how when in our buildings you try to run a class with so many students in it? Is the vocational under the same sort of restrictions? Like if you only have one or two that are interested?
They're actually higher. For the most part, VOTEC, you correct me if I'm wrong, won't run it if it's under 15. I mean, some they might, but for the most part, they're held at a bit of a higher number. Do you see it differently then?
They take a look at our requests. We've already put in our tentative request for the year. They look at all the districts in the component BOCES and say, do we have enough actually to run the program? And if not, then the program wouldn't run. I mean, so they need to see actually what it is. Or if they do and not as many districts are taking part, the cost could actually be a little bit higher. So. Okay, so that was our first. We will have many more discussions as we're going along on the budget. As I said, I'm happy to say we're ahead of the process last year, which is good. So now we can really start focusing in on how are we going to close the gap in the next several meetings. Okay?
Thank you.